welcome. Thank you so much for coming tonight. My name is Gabriel Brodbar. I'm the Executive Director of the NYU Reynolds program in social entrepreneurship. And I'm thrilled to welcome all of you to a very special installment of our 2013 Social Entrepreneurship in the 21st Century Speaker Series, a screening of the film Waiting for Mamu with the filmmaker Thomas Morgan and executive producer Susan Sarandon. Woo! So why has the Reynolds program chosen to screen this film? The purpose of the Reynolds program, the very simple reason we exist, is to champion the people and the innovations that are going to lead to genuine and large-scale social change. Sometimes that change comes from pattern-breaking visionaries. These are extraordinary individuals who see a hole in the social fabric and are almost obsessively, compulsively driven to fix that hole. They find new patterns in order to fix them, and they act on them. One of the heroes of this film, Pushpa Basnet, is that type of change maker. She saw children growing up without a childhood and figured out a way to return at least a piece of it to them. Sometimes that change comes from people who use media and the arts to spur all of us to meaningful action. And Thomas and Susan, I think, are examples of that type of change maker. When I first met them in Pushpa about a year ago, I did not know that there were children being raised in prison while their parents do hard time. Right? As you're going to learn from this extraordinary film, that is real in Nepal in 2013. Fortunately, what is also very real is the hope that Pushpa can offer these children and families, as well as the power of the storytelling and the attention that people like Tom can bring to this issue. We're going to see a screening of the film. Following that, Susan and Tom are going to talk about the film, talk about their work. This is an extraordinary week for the people of Nepal. And then they're going to open up the conversation to all of us. So without further ado, please join me in warmly welcoming Mr. Thomas Morgan.
I'm not really sure how to follow that up. This is a film that means a lot to me. I got to spend a period of time of my life with these kids and with Pushpa, and I can tell you it completely changed me. It changed my family. My kids still Skype with these kids. They know these kids, and so they are very much like family to me. I'm honored to be able to tell her amazing story, and I thank White Hamal for being here and for sponsoring. Gabe, thank you for your work in pulling this together. Susan, thank you for coming. And all of my friends who have come and have supported me through this film, through other films, and through big and crazy ideas kind of moving forward. Thank you. Thank you. Here you go. So again, thank you everybody for coming. This is a very personal story to me, and Susan's got to spend a reasonable amount of time with Pushpa, and I think you would probably agree and attest to the spirit of...
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, it was funny because I nominated Pushpa, and then when we were sitting there, it's like everyone should win. We should. Why do they just choose one person? And when they chose her, I was like, yes, yes. And she's. Well, you want to say what's happening now with her and the money and the where she is?
So really, the intent of the film was not only to raise awareness about the situation in Nepal, but I think more importantly, to help Pushpa raise the rest of the money to build this house. So she said since 2005, they've had to move 5 times, which, I mean, when you think about moving your own family 5 times, then moving 50 kids 5 times is quite incredible. So with the money that she won from the CNN Hero Award, she was able to buy a plot of land, and now we're trying to help her raise the rest of the money to actually build the home. So everything else seems somewhat trivial with regard to the film, if that in fact is not our goal. So I think that, you know, little by little we've gained momentum, and there's a foundation, so I'll make the plug early. If you go to utopiafound.org, you will see a Pushpa Basnet page, and on there you can donate to her cause and to her, it's tax deductible, they take no fees out, 100% goes to her cause and to her film. So, but you know, I think that just telling her story and then putting the face to her story has helped a lot. But I also think you would attest to this maybe, that that's also the power of documentary film, power of film in general.
I think what's happening in documentaries now is the most exciting cinema that we have. I mean, it's just extraordinary with the new technology, and you can get in places and be less obtrusive, and it doesn't cost as much, and to put a face to some of these kind of theoretical issues is just so important for so many reasons. First of all, because it encourages people to be the protagonist in their own lives. When you see what people can do, you know, just, I mean, how many 21-year-olds see something tragic and they go, oh, but nobody, you know, the ones that go in and follow through, and then one thing leads to the next, and it's not that anyone ever starts off being a hero. They just start off kind of wanting to eat that apple and know, and then once you know, you can't go back. And when you have the kind of character that she has, and when you put a face there, it just affects people. And I believe that everyone, when they have information, they respond. People are really have big hearts and want to help other people, but they just don't know necessarily what's going on. And a documentary can frame a new reality for you and kind of broaden your world in such an extraordinary way. And Tom has a great story because he kind of just fell into this whole thing. I mean, the whole thing of making documentaries. This was the second one.
Yeah, the second, which will actually be the first.
Which will end up being the first.
As the second was being edited. So
but only because he's an example of somebody who saw a situation with the homeless and was very disturbed and took the time to personally meet people who were without a home, and then decided that he had to do something about it, and hired a bunch of kids to go across the United States and interview different demographics of homelessness in an attempt to try to explain to people that the homeless were not just the people that we think they are, which are alcoholic, crazy people, mostly men, but that everyone is so, there are a lot of hidden homeless among us. And so actually one of my sons was the director and went across and interviewed all of these different demographics. And that was his, and that just grew out of a person who had no film experience, really.
Well, it didn't hurt that when I was in Spin with a friend of mine.
Club that's just on
Pull this open, there's a Spin logo. That, you know, when I first met Susan, I told her, you know, I was introduced to her by, actually by Morgan Spurlock, who I didn't know who he was when I told him the story. And Susan's first reaction was, well, how do I help you? And, you know, so that helps push you over the edge when you have that person who says, how do I help you? Or, how, you know, where all of a sudden this crazy idea doesn't seem so crazy anymore. Pushpa's story, if you speak to Pushpa, her intention was never to take all of these kids out of prison. Her intent was to take one, just one little girl. And that's all she thought she could handle. And then little by little, she kept taking more, and she kept finding more and more stories. And all of this being said, they don't put kids in prison as punishment. It's not punitive. It's simply the way it is. It's unfortunate that they don't have a system that can afford to do anything else. So I really tried to not show it as, you know, the Nepali government hammering down on these kids. It's simply the best they can do with the resources that they have. But amazingly, Pushpa decided at 21 that I can do something, you know, whether it's one or whether it's 100. So it's quite amazing. And then what you find when you kind of open that door, and we've talked about this before, is then you start seeing people like Pushpa. And there's a lot more of them than you think. And they just don't stand up and say, hey, look at me. They're just the people who grind it out every day doing amazing work, and with very little credit and with often very little funding.
But with a very rich life. I mean, you can see where, you know, Pushpa has gotten as much as these children have. And that's the thing that people always think when you get involved in something like this, you're some dour, you know, person who's not particularly joyful, and you know, this is like a dragged into how you know, you're so altruistic to do something like this. It's completely self-serving. It's just the most wonderful thing you can do. And you end up meeting people and being around people that that kind of give you hope and you know, make your belief in human beings much better than you would if you just pick up the paper or turn on the TV, which is just filled with nothing but bad news. And so, I mean, you learn how extraordinary it is to become involved and to reach out to another human being in the smallest way, and to find something that speaks to you is the other trick, you know, is to, you know, what moves you is what you should gravitate towards. And I love that she started out just wanting to do the easiest school she possibly could.
But I think what's funny too, or interesting for me too, is then it makes me look at me and say, well, what can I do, right? I mean, you always say, oh, I'm doing everything I can. Really? I mean, really? You look at this and you say, wow, maybe I'm not doing all I can. And so hopefully that's what stems or starts the conversation with, well, maybe I can do more. Maybe I can do more about this thing that I care about. Maybe I could do just a little bit more than I did before, or get involved a little bit more. And I think, like you said, it becomes like this drug where all of a sudden you see this and you see what you're able to do, and then you just want to continue doing more. And I hope that's the case. But like I said, my kids Skype with these kids, and they form this crazy little bond, and Pushpa's like family. I probably speak to Pushpa at least twice a week. Mostly to, you know, give her updates on where we're screening and what's going on, as she, you know, she's at home with 50 kids. So I don't know which one of us is happier on which day. But she's an amazing spirit, and she's not letting up, and her goal really is to build this home. It'll be the first home like it that meets the international standard in the country. And I mean, right now these kids sleep, 2 kids in a twin bed. An older boy and 1 younger boy, and older girl and younger girl. And so, and then there's 80 more kids that are in the prison that she wants to bring out. And so she really is at a point now where she thinks, I can fix this. I can single-handedly fix this, which is pretty amazing. It's pretty amazing. So I guess there's questions. Questions? Anyone?
Yeah, we have 2 microphones, one there and one there. If anybody would like to ask some questions, please come up to the microphone.
Just go ahead.
I was
Yeah.
I can speak loudly. How much will it cost for her to build the house?
$419,000, to be very exact. So they bought the.
Plot? How much is the plot?
They've already paid $300,000 for the plot. It's $419,000 to build the house to the international standard. There's a lot of moving parts in that they don't. You think, wow, that's a lot of money, but everything there is done pretty much by hand. So all the concrete's done by hand and all of that. So my hope was, in case any of you work for Caterpillar, I had this great idea. So Caterpillar was one of the sponsors for the CNN Hero Awards. Pushpa has always said that her home will be called the Butterfly Home. So I thought, well, Caterpillar to Butterfly, like there's this perfect connection, right? If they sent the people over and the equipment, this could be like the greatest PR/humanitarian thing. And then at the end, I have this whole idea, right, in my head. At the end, it's just, the last line is, that's just the way we're built, right? Caterpillar. And that would be like so if any of you work for them, there you go.
Or you can become a marketing.
Right, yeah, all right, right. That's really my only good idea, so I don't even know if it's that good, so.
Hi, my name's Hannah. Thank you so much for this presentation. It was great. I was curious, and you may not be able to answer the question, but it struck me as a big issue that when Pushpa's kids leave the home, either aging out when they reach a certain age, or when their parents come back from jail, that there's not really a plan in place as to what to do with the kids. There's not a set. Definitely when the parents come back from jail, the kids are going back with their families or staying here. It's sort of like play it by ear. And I'm sure that has a lot to do with the fact that they don't have the resources to even have a home and, steady resources at the moment to even plan for the future. But as outsiders, have you guys seen any potential solutions for that issue moving forward?
Well, first of all, there is no aging out. They can stay there as long as they want. There is no such thing as aging out. The agreement that Pushpa makes with each one of the parents is when you get out of prison, you can come back and get your children. So she basically legally takes, it's like adoption, she legally adopts them while they're with her, and then they can come back and basically she gives them the right to adopt them back. It's their parents. So that's the deal. Some parents come back, some parents never come back. But she will continue to pay for their school if the parents come back and get those children and they want to continue with school, she'll continue to pay for it. She'll do everything that she can to support those parents. She also helps support the women specifically who come out of prison in trying to help them make a living so that they can support their children as well. So she wants the family unit obviously to be back intact and help, but that's kind of the deal. That's like she said, that's really painful. It's a really painful reality for her, but that's the best she can do.
I think that it was a fantastic film. I think the fact that you
I think so too. We are on the same page.
laid down the illness of a man at the bottom of a lot of this, who had, is able to traffic women. That was so powerful. I think the children, as you presented them, were perfect because we should be reminded continuously that that is our tomorrow. And you are wonderful, Ms. Sarandon. I'm one of your favorite.
Thank you.
I think
I'm so glad you're on my side.
He's on both of our sides. This is fantastic.
You're passionate about
As a
this.
young person, for me, because I'm much
Probably not, actually.
Seriously, I think that was a fantastic film.
Thank
You
you.
should go out there, and more people would react to more of this. That which we need not just I live in Kathmandu, that we need all over the world, not just Nepal, but next door, in India, and in Europe, where I'm originally from. I think that if more people realize these things, and it comes from the U.S., the goodness that comes from the U.S., I'm sick of negativity in the minds of most of these people, most of my friends that say, well, America, but America is also this, that they bring a film like this to the fore. And I think it should go more to the fore than ever.
Well, I'm trying. We're on the same page again. We want this to go to the fore and then 4 more.
Thank you.
I volunteer at this place in Charlotte, North Carolina, where I live, called International House. And we have people that come and stay at our house for a couple weeks at a time. I have 4 children, and I can't afford to show my children the world, so I bring the world to them as best we can. And so there was a dinner, and we went to this dinner with our host. We were hosting a person in our house. And Pushpa was just sitting over in the corner, and I said, well, what do you do? And she told me this story, and I was like, are you kidding me? And then I came up and I told Susan the story, and Susan was the first to say, well, you gotta make that film. So a month and a half later, without really any funding, just like I started with the homeless doc, we were in Kathmandu and we were planning to make the film. And she was one of 45,000 CNN Hero nominees when we started. We had no idea that she would be the CNN Hero of the Year. But to Susan's story earlier, we're on our way over to the CNN Hero Awards, and Susan says, well, she won, right? And I said, oh, I don't know. And she goes, well, you're not going to make me announce somebody who didn't win, are you? And
I don't think I really said that.
Yeah, I think it was actually I think it was harsher. But I was just like, oh, God, I hope she wins. And then the whole conversation.
As you know, each celebrity gets up with somebody and tells their story and introduces them, and there's a whole bunch of these fabulous stories. I mean, everybody's just a killer.
Amazing
stories. But
go ahead.
As somebody who's very passionate about documentary filmmaking, I'm always curious to, my dad calls it the fire in the belly moment, where you knew that this was the story that you needed to tell. So I guess it maybe builds off of that other young lady's question, but what was that moment for both of you guys where you knew that this is the story you had to tell and this was your passion?
Oh, it's just a great story. I mean, somebody that that you can actually see such results, and that starts out so small and in this setting. And I mean, like, can't write this stuff. It's just brilliant. I mean, and she's so articulate, which helps, because there's sometimes, you know, I work with somebody called Somali Mom who is in Cambodia rescuing trafficked children. And she's not as comfortable as Pushpa speaking. You know, she can speak English, but it would be very hard for her to be on camera that completely and that clearly. And so that was really a stroke of genius too, that she's so passionate and so solid and just, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, I think for me, at first, you know, I talked to her, and then she went back home, and then when I Skyped with her and I saw all those kids, being a father of 4 kids, I was like, are you kidding me? Like, I have to do this. But Pushpa, in reality, is very shy. But when she starts talking about these kids, it's like this amazing spirit that kind of takes over. There was the one little boy that you saw when we were at the prison and we took him out of the prison. So she is sitting there, and one of the officers came over and was kind of standing over her and looking down at her, and she's real tiny, and looking down at her and was telling her that, you know, I don't know why you do this. These kids aren't going to amount to anything. They don't have a chance, and you're wasting your time or whatever. And all of a sudden, she just stood up, and she got right in his face and started pointing her finger. And she was, I don't even know what she was saying, but it was just 100 miles an hour, and I was just like, I was so taken back by, like, she said, she goes, I'm very cowardly, she said, until it comes to these children. And then it's, you know, the gloves are off. So I think that spirit, you really feel it when you speak to her and when you spend time with her, and you can't help but want to tell her story.
It's also interesting that I don't think you knew, or the way that her sister speaks of her, you get a feeling that she was an outsider, and then she had a rough childhood, and so and at school wasn't easy for her. And I don't think that you necessarily know that when you're going to do it, but suddenly, you know, you even have a backstory. You see how this happened, and that she just had found the perfect place.
It seemed like the context of passing on the thanks that comes at the end was so profound. How comfortable she is in her own skin, having been bullied, and you know, it really is.
Well, it made me think, you know, when you have a kid that's giving you a lot of trouble, that you just have to wait till they grow up, and then they can apply that to something. You know, and they say she decided she'd do something, she would just do it, she wouldn't think about it, and then you see those are exactly the traits that have served her now.
As a psychologist, we talk about resilience, and you know, where does that come from? And you know, is it genetic? Is it environmental? And you know, she's so inspirational.
Yeah.
It was a fabulous piece of work.
And then that love that she gives the kids, that they then pass on.
Yes.
And in so doing, redeem themselves and have their own worth. I mean, which happens in a lot of these situations, again with Somalia and here, where the older kids champion the little kids. And you could see with the older boy how happy he was that the little boys were all really needing him, and that he had a role and that he had worth, you know.
And it's a family.
Yeah, it's
It's
definitely a
it
family.
definitely
That's
is.
family.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Go ahead. Oh, go ahead, sorry.
Hi there.
Hi.
I'm a little short for this. Thank you so much for bringing this documentary to us. I think it's great that you were able to kind of humanize the person who's championing the effort and also the children in these stories. I think that it helps each of us to kind of understand where these people are coming from and feel a certain compassion for the situations, but also to get it inside of us, how the other lady had said, get the fire in the belly. I hope that each of us walks away from this and actually does something, goes onto your site and donates, And my question is to kind of follow up on that, have there been efforts, kind of how you mentioned Caterpillar and maybe something of that, where you would maybe connect with organizations that could come and help to a broader degree, maybe people that could come and teach the children, maybe like you mentioned, you Skype, maybe there could be efforts for people to Skype with the children. Maybe other people could come and volunteer to help build the house or things of that nature. For example, I work for a large corporation that helps to donate to causes, and I know if I go back to them and I say, I'd like to donate to this effort, please match me. If I can find, I think it's something like 10 people that would be into it, you can volunteer together, you can set up trips to go, things of that nature. So I know a lot of corporations do those sort of things. Has there been effort to try to get other organizations involved in the effort, not just,
So I think there's a couple of things that are important, not only to me, but to Pushpa as well. And yes, and thank you. And if you could help with that, that would be amazing. But it's, and this is probably completely out of line, but it's like mission trips where people go over and then they do this work and then they come back. That's really not what they need. What they need is to have people employed. It's very desperately poor in some houses and places. And so to give them the tools and to educate them how to do the work in maybe a better way would be, I think, better than having people go over and do it for them. For me, the idea of Caterpillar is to show them how to run heavy equipment, how to manage these situations, and how to build in a different way than they're building right now. And maybe that affords them a better future, because simply going over and doing it for them, I don't feel like that's what they need. And so to the extent that we can provide the educators that educate in a process that then kind of lives on would be fantastic. Since the CNN Hero Awards, Pushpa has been just inundated with people who want to come and volunteer. And so she kind of picks, not necessarily people, but skills that would be useful, not just for her organization, but for the women coming out of prisons or whatever. So any of those special skills that could be then, applied and kind of live on beyond that one time would be fantastic. And before I forget, there's a couple of people in the audience I would love to acknowledge just really quickly. First, obviously Susan for coming, but Mary Fisher is here. Mary is fantastic, and I feel like we are like soulmates from another life, but Mary is very inspirational and just a wonderful human being, and I say this because she's gotten me into the Sedona International Film Festival, so thank you. Thank you for that. And Richard Fuller is here, and Richard does amazing work. And so if you're more thinking about environmental issues, and Richard's organization, Blacksmith Institute, identifies environmental hotspots around the world that most affect the health of children, and then they send in these brilliant scientists from all over the world to figure out how to fix it without taking away from the livelihood of the families. And it's brilliant, and it's beautiful, and we filmed a couple of things. There will be a couple of episodes, and it's going to be fantastic, and thank you. And for your support, thanks for coming. And Dawn Porter is a ridiculously good filmmaker that you'll see a lot of her stuff. Gideon's Army is one of her films. So anyway, thank you. Anyway, on with the questions. I got that out of the way now, sorry.
So firstly, congratulations, because this is an amazing documentary, and I think that you portrayed the issue in a very clear way. Like, I teared up halfway through because it's just too emotional, and I never knew about this particular case. So I guess this is the issue that not many people know about, all the stuff that goes on around them. And because, as he said, today's children are tomorrow's future, like for me particularly, I'd like to be able to help in more than just donating. I know you said that it's more useful if we actually teach them how to do it instead of doing it for them, but the process of working together with them, it's something that would help us grow as children who are going into the future, who can make change in the future, through our work and progressions, and as well as help them grow and learning new techniques, I guess, and maintaining their new lives. So I wanted to know if do you intend on taking this to bigger level, the next level, like maybe opening up your own organization that would tackle more than, like you said, the homeless people, you've already done that, maybe, and now you've done the Nepal issue. How about other issues? Like, do you intend on making an organization or just taking this a step further?
We've been talking because we have this idea to form a production company to fund and finish and make socially responsible documentaries, but so we've been talking to someone in my agency to find out how to set it up, and now that a lot of my kids are gone, using my house as an office and a place to edit and everything. So we'd like to help people make more films and finish films that are already started and whatever, but we have to figure out not having, we have to find the money, and we've got the structure, and we want to make sure that we know how to set it up. But that would be the next step, I think, would be to form some kind of an umbrella company that actually gives a certain amount of money to filmmakers on all different subjects, but that have some kind of relevance socially about change and to things that people don't know about. I certainly am contacted a lot to do voiceovers, to narrate documentaries because I work very cheaply. And so you'll hear a lot of documentaries with my voice. And I know some of them get shown, some of them don't get, but I know that there's so many people making really, really worthwhile documentaries. So the idea would be to try to find and understand and educate ourselves on how to find the best home for each of these films so that they can be seen by whatever demographic should see them. And so we're at a transitional point now where we're trying to put a company together that would do those kind of things.
Can I ask one more thing?
Yes.
Are there any opportunities for us to participate in more than I'm definitely going to donate, but more than that, if we'd like to go in and actually participate in this effort in improving other people's lives that we have no idea about, if we can actually go and participate, not just teach, not just do it for them, but learn from them. And
I think what Tom's trying to say is that sometimes, for instance, if you go and someone has to be responsible for finding out where you stay and how you work, it adds, right now this is really grassroots. This is not Save the Children, that organization that has a lot of money to spend and God knows where they're even spending it. So I think at the moment it's probably not the focus. I mean, certainly, I guess if there's any film students here, I don't know, once we get set up, if there'll be some internships and things like that might be going on that we would need help. Who's going to be at my house in another year? But I think right now, I applaud your wanting to be a hands-on kind of person. I think that we just don't have the setup right now to really understand where to point people in the direction to, unless you wanted to, I don't know if they take clothing or what they do, books or ping pong tables. We might have to give a ping pong table. It's that kind of, raising awareness certainly is a good thing.
But I think, beyond just this film, you don't have to be an organization to organize. My 13-year-old daughter started an organization at her school, and they do basically flash mobs, good deeds, right? They go to people's houses, and it's part of their community service, but she decided, I don't want to have to slot into these organizations and find a place. I'm just going to go out in my community with other kids, and I'm going to identify an opportunity, and we're going to fix it as best we can as 13-year-old kids. So I think that type of thinking, as opposed to trying to figure out where do you fit within the confines of another organization, is sometimes helpful. And it doesn't have to be something that you start an organization. You can just do it one day and say, well, today I can help with the AIDS breakfast, or today I can go out and have my own breakfast for 25 homeless people at the end of the block, because we can. So hopefully it inspires you to just, even if it's one thing, just go out and do something. But I think you're on the right track.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Well, thank you for bringing this documentary to us. And actually, this is my second time encountering this issue. It really hit home this time. I went to Peru, Ayacucho, one summer, and the organization, actually NYU, took us into a prison, and the kids there too are in prison with their moms. And this really just hit home. And actually the documentary mentioned that there is social pressure against these kids. Can you talk a little bit more about, has that been changing the perception, the community perception on how criminals' kids can turn out changed? Has it changed because of Pushpa?
I would love to say yes, but the answer is no. She's on the verge of getting kicked out of the house she's in now, and she just won the CNN Hero Award, so you would think of all the times when you would kick somebody out of a house. But no, not really, unfortunately. I think that it's just different. Culturally, it's different. It's different because they know families and people and whatever, and so it's very, very difficult. It's, you know, it would be like if you found a champion here for homelessness. There's still a lot of people who are going to still have the same stereotypes in their head about the issue of homelessness and why people are there. So
social mobility is not that easy.
Right.
And,
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it's not easy here. And certainly if one isn't educated, it's just going to perpetuate this.
I think a lot of successes coming out of Pushpa's organization is what will change the way people perceive the kids, I hope.
Right. I have the same hopes.
Thank you.
Hi. So I just want to say that this film, like, it was truly an amazing film, and it affected me on a very personal level because basically, like, I'm Egyptian, but I was raised in the States, and I feel like I produced a film like when I was living in Egypt called The Square. And I feel like even though like the world is getting increasingly like interconnected, we are still not aware and not really care, but like we're not aware. We don't really see what's happening in like areas that we think are like remote or like foreign, and that I think that really like threatens like our understanding of like the world, because like this film, like, it showed, like, it allows us to understand like this issue, and like even though like not just about human rights, because we think about like not just like on a global level, but also like for the environment or anything like that. And like what you said about like documentary filmmaking and how like anyone can really make a documentary, and like it's so important like these days to allow the people gain insight on like certain issues. So yeah, I just want to say that thank you so much for being here, and I really appreciated the whole entire film, and thank you.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much. I'm interested in hearing a bit more about what your other project you've been working on, the documentary that was the first. Can you tell us a little bit more about that and what's going on and what the next steps are with that?
Sure. So Susan has been very involved in that. Jack, her son, was one of the directors on the film and did an amazing job, as he had this crew literally right out of school that went from LA to New York profiling America's homeless. We edited the first version of that, and it was pretty good. And it afforded a lot of conversation. And I spoke to Congress in September of 2012 on the issue of homelessness, and then I spoke again on Capitol Hill, and then I spoke at the Democratic National Convention on the issue of homelessness. Because I came from this place where I really wasn't asking for money, I was just telling them what we saw. So that in and of itself was great in helping change. But we have now got this incredible editor who's re-editing the film, Abhay Safsky. He's right in the third row back there.
Oh, hi, Abhay.
And so as we kind of reframe the way that we just present the material, it feels and looks completely different, and actually that's one of the points that we have
another pass. There, you know, you run out of money, you run out of time, and then that Pushpa was so compelling, so it was kind of put on the back burner, and then Abhay generously, after doing this one, said he'd take a look, and I think
he's doing it for free.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I'm kidding. That check is in the mail.
So I guess what's going to happen then, Michael Moore was interested in seeing it, you know, to kind of
Yeah.
give some notes, and because he was interested in this, and I know Michael, and so the next thing would be, I mean, Abai had a very busy schedule because he got married. And so now he is now focusing a little bit more on it. So, I mean, it's beautifully shot, and it was an experience for these kids coming right out of USC to go on the road and meet these people going across the states. There was a kid that was living under the bleachers of his school, and it turned out that there was a young woman at USC that was in the film department that no one knew was homeless. You know, it's this hidden epidemic because it's so easy to fall through the cracks. So I think it's an important film for people to see, because it's so easy to just think it could never happen to me, and to ignore it, and to feel, you know, aggravated by seeing people living on the street, or, you know, it spoils your day to see someone in distress in a box. And but when you can meet these people and hear their struggles, I think it can be quite effective, and that's what Tom was testifying about, is that with no low-income housing anymore and the economy the way it is, I mean, more and more people are finding themselves so very close to being on the street or in their car or whatever. So.
And that film will premiere at the Sedona Film Festival, which we're very much looking forward to. But it's really, it's amazing stories. It's amazing stories of people, both some very triumphantly finding their way because of help or whatever out, and others unfortunately not. So.
And also just how hard it is to live on the street and try to find a way to get back. I mean, it's just so difficult. So they followed, you know, a night in the life, and all different kinds of people, and riding the bus and whatever. It certainly affected them making the film.
Hi. Thank you, Tom, for bringing the story from Kathmandu to all the way here, and also taking us back to Kathmandu, or from Nepal. The story which you have presented is very moving. We didn't realize it was so bad. Kids were growing up in the jail. So we do have a pretty strong community in New York, Nepalese community. So we'd like to, you know, do some fundraising down the road, and also maybe rent your movie or borrow your movie. So I would like to know what is the protocol in borrowing this movie from you. And then whether you could come and join us for different other.
Yeah, we can definitely work something. Yeah, definitely work something out, because the intent of the film is really to raise the funds for the house. So yeah, so I would rather come with the film and then talk about it, and because I'm still hoping for distribution of this film. So all those who are here for distribution,
again, thank you.
Yes, thank you.
This time I'm not going to play any financial part, but rather I would like to thank you, especially, of course, Thomas, and my role model, Susan Sarandon. Yes, you are. Activist, more than actress. And inspiring from that moment, I have started writing in my card now, actor activist. I do produce a weekly television show in White Himal Television, Sampreshan, the interpretation. And the visual is always, this is the means of interpretation, and the visuals always speaks loud. But one scene, Thomas, you have mentioned, Pushpa clearly says that one situation, one case, I couldn't bring it up. That she mentioned the failure of that case. And that's somehow pushing us very harder to the ditch. What was the problem?
She was young in her organization, and she didn't, you know, she was 21 years old. And so when she went and she tried to explain, this is what I'm going to do, they said, well, where's the founder of your organization? And she said, well, right here. And they said,
as a
no.
director, from your directorial viewpoint, it was intentional, or just you were trying to connect the dots in the filmatic version? It was intentional to give such a message, so much failure going on, even she wished to have it?
No, I think that it really speaks to Pushpa's spirit. You know, everything hasn't been smooth. It doesn't always work out perfectly. You know, and so I think, but I also think that she speaks so passionately about that one failure case, that is what has driven her to make sure that never happens again. And she's been more vocal, and she's probably been more prominent with the media and in trying to make sure that her message is clear and that it's out there. And so I think that really struck a chord with her. And there's so few times that we were able to find Pushpa in anything but this happy and joyful. She's just a happy person. She's always happy. And so to hear her talk about that and see that look on her face was really moving, because you realize how much it really did hurt. And it was just one child, but it was one that she didn't get. So
You made it. Thank you.
thank you.
One remarkable thing is how she had access to health care for this one girl who couldn't, who needed speech pathology, and they wanted to check her hearing. And if you think about, you know, in this country where you have children or people who need access to health care, and maybe it was even easier for her in Nepal than it is for some people here.
Well, it's easier now. It wasn't always that way. It wasn't always that way. Yeah, it wasn't always that way, though. She really struggled for a long time to get anybody to come and look at the
I mean,
kids.
that was inspiring.
Yeah.
I want to say one thank you for being here and presenting us at this movie. I'm currently an MBA student at Stern, and I commend you on trying to grow this organization and especially send the message for this particular movie that you've created. And I want to ask, have you considered other avenues, especially now that you're here at NYU? At the business school, at least, we have a consulting core for the first time in the business school. We have a human rights organization, an entire department for it. We have professors who are connected to the International Monetary Fund and other financial banking organizations that can, I believe, if you let them know about this, or if we can let them know about this, can quite quickly help you in your cause to launch this from a grassroots effort into, I guess, more public view. Have you considered doing something like this? Or
I would
communicating
consider,
this?
yeah. And if they work for Caterpillar, even better. Yeah, no, we would consider every avenue, and if those avenues are, if those are something that you have connections to or that you can help, I will give you my email, and certainly, please.
That'd be my pleasure, absolutely.
Yeah, that would be fantastic. One more question, and then we have to, well, we can get you two real quick.
Okay. Hi. Thank you so much for being here. It's really exciting and a pleasure to see a story that's told really ethically and responsibly. And so I'm wondering, about the experience of collaborating, because it's clear that when making this film, you're really collaborating with the community, with the kids, probably with interpreters and people that are helping you with all the logistics. So I'm wondering how the narrative formed, or what that experience was like when you're working with so many people that are really invested in this story.
You just keep shooting. I mean, like, we just kept shooting, and we didn't really, we knew what the house was, right? And we talked about what the story kind of was.
The kids that were pretty inexperienced that were the crew and the producer. So it was...
yeah, Francois was Francois Caillot.
There was one other real adult. And Tom, one other really experienced DP. Although the younger kid that is my son's friend that shot that, and the other one is a very good DP. But you had done some groundwork ahead of time because he'd been there before. And then it was really catch as catch can on the number of, it wasn't a very long shoot or anything.
But I think what happens, though, is that you go in with one idea of how you think it's going to happen, and then it goes completely different. And if Morgan Spurlock said this one time, he said, if it ends up the way that you anticipated from the beginning, you've done something wrong. And I think that's so much the truth. Like,
I think it's true with even movies, with scripted movies.
Yeah.
And with gaining access, did you come up against any problems with actually gaining access?
We had a lot of problems.
Yeah.
So it's a communist government, and we were asked to submit all of our footage back to the government before we left, so that they could go through it and decide which footage they would allow us to keep. And so because of that, we said we're not going to even permit. We're just going to go over there and shoot it and bring it back. And hopefully we don't get caught, but if we do, we already know what the inside of the prison looks like. So, there were a number of things that we were kind of leery and up against, but in the end, the government's been, I think, very receptive and happy, because I think it's fair-handed. I think we don't go out of our way to show anybody as, being punitive against these kids. It's just the way that it is. And so hopefully it brings more resources to Pushpa, which actually takes more pressure off the government to figure out how do we house these kids.
I'm sure if there was a way for the government to do a better job, they would, because it certainly can't make being in prison any easier to have a bunch of little kids in there either.
Right.
So
Yeah, and I think
it's just a bad system.
it's that, or they're out on the street, so kind of pick your poison, right? So, go ahead.
Hi, my name is Lily. Thank you for coming. I'm a student at NYU Wagner. I'm originally from Detroit, and I imagine that a lot of kids there deal with what the kids in Nepal deal with when when their parents go to prison. Do you think Pushpa's model can be replicated domestically, somewhere in Detroit, maybe?
I think, unfortunately, what's happened is the word orphanage in the United States has gotten this really bad. We instead have this system, and I can go on and on about this. This is another film we talked about called Running to 18 that someday we'll make. But there's this idea that what we do is better, right? We put these kids in foster care. And foster care in a lot of cases is great. In a lot of cases it's absolutely horrific. And so I think looking at Pushpa's model, where you can bring kids together and you can bring the resources, the best resources to those kids, is fantastic. But for whatever reason, we have this idea of what foster care is, and we try to export that idea. And I don't necessarily know that we always have the best intentions in mind. It's just the system that we have in place. And so I don't, really, to answer your question in a really long-winded answer, is I have no idea. I hope that there's something like Pushpa, and honestly, I hope there's champions like her championing for kids, but the reality is in the United States, we still treat children like property.
Well, we incarcerate. We have an industry of incarceration as young as you can possibly. There's a great documentary called The Interrupters that's about Detroit. And the members of that community, because it's so violent, it's one of the most violent cities in America, and the people within the community have gotten together to be on the street and try to interrupt the heat of and that's an amazing, all the violence that's coming down, but I don't think that there's a system. I think that the focus, we should focus on keeping families together and finding, giving kids hope and education and a future, and trying to eradicate the reasons that they would end up being displaced kids, which mostly has to do with education and poverty and drugs and that kind of thing. But I think too, there's so many rules, that are misplaced rules. She couldn't operate a house like that in the United States.
Never.
They would move in 2 seconds and take those kids away.
Well, they would shut her down for health code, right? Two kids in a bed, are you kidding me? Outdoor plumbing, are you kidding me? Like, none of that would,
All
it would
those
never
kids that
happen.
are chopping vegetables.
But to the credit of the Nepali government, they look at it and say it's better than what we've got. So let's, and so for that, she's grateful and I'm grateful. It's amazing. All right, I think, Gabe, that's it. Thank you very much, everybody, for coming.